like you said, he's got 3 rings, right? And just to clarify, none of those rings are with Toronto, right?
Is Fraser Minton going to have more points than Slafkovsky this year? Fraser Minton sucks at hockey. This guy might not even be an NHLer, so we got to settle down on that one.
Adelaide, no. Minus 160 on will they show her holding a drink in her hand.
They are 2 points behind the St. Louis Blues in the wild card, and they are...
Oh, the Blues are dog water. The Blues suck. The Blues are the worst of those 4 teams that I mentioned by a mile.
And
they're not a good hockey team.
Care, like have some set of balls, have some response, have some pride for what the hell goes on the ice. It's so absurd.
I'm looking forward to the parade, but that's going to be later in the year.
I'd rather have so money in that than have Arbor Soderblom. I would rather stack a bunch of garbage that I have in the corner of my room over here than have Arbor Soderblom in that. He's
May 29th, welcome back to Edgework, presented by Pinnacle. I'm Zack Phillips, joined here on this Wednesday morning by a different cast, So Money Sports. Matt Russell helping us out here today to break down what has gone on over the last couple of days, the games ahead of us here tonight, or the game, ahead of us here tonight, and tomorrow night's game as well. But before we can get into all of that, before we can break down the games, give out best bets, answer questions from the chat, I want to remind people that today's show, as always, is sponsored by Pinnacle Sportsbook. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sportsbook. They've been in business for 25 years now. You can find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly, and remember, it is not available in the US. But as we go through the games here today, as we pull up different prices, as we talk about the different series, you're going to notice more times than not, whether it's sides, totals, first periods, however you want to approach these things, Pinnacle Sportsbook, they're going to have the best odds. So make sure to add Pinnacle to your list of outs today. Boys, the Vancouver Canucks no longer in, so I feel like today's show will probably be a little bit of a shorter one here because we're not going to be able to dig into the emotions of the series for you gentlemen and what's playing into this to that extent. But nonetheless, you two are perfect to bring on here today to help us dig into what's going on specifically with the Dallas Stars, the Edmonton Oilers series, as you just watched that one go underway. We're going to have that that game here tonight. We're also going to be able to dig into the Rangers last game and what we're seeing for prices out of them. But let's start in the Western Conference, the one that you two are potentially most familiar with here. If we look back to Game 3 with the Stars and the Oilers, this Oilers team, they get out to a 2-0 lead. You get some home ice there. You've got some crowd momentum behind you. But as quickly as that lead came, it disappeared. The Dallas Stars, 3 goals in under 4 minutes, taking a 3-2 lead in that game, able to kind of claw back, take control of that game. And ultimately, that's the end of it for the Oilers, it felt like. I mean, you get a tie there, but not regardless, it just felt like Dallas was in control the rest of the way. They're now in the lead in that series, 2-1. You still have one more game here in Edmonton, and as we look at the price for tonight's game, we're currently seeing this Oilers team minus 130, the Stars plus 121, and a total of 6 for the most part in this game. Matt, from what we saw in Game 3 to what we're seeing here for this price tonight, heading into Game 4 between the Stars and the Oilers, what are your thoughts on how this series has played out thus far and kind of the number that we've seen adjusting as this series has gone on?
Yeah, Zach, first of all, good to be back with you. Just want to squash the rumors that are, all over the internet about a 2-week suspension that Rob put on me about when I tried to expense my trip out to Vancouver. Guys, that never happened, okay? I mean, did I try to expense it? Yeah, I did. It's just, the schedule fell the way the schedule fell. So everybody, just calm down out there. As for this series, listen, it's no different than the last series that the Stars were involved in and the series before that. I'm so far deep into the Stars here. It's ridiculous. So to watch them come out in these first periods and just not be able to get it going, we'll say, is it got to be a little annoying for our guy, Coach DeBoer, who, I don't know if he's just sitting around waiting for Game 7 so that he can, add to that undefeated record of his. But man, it's, I can understand it, in Edmonton, that first game of the series or home game of the series for the Oilers, where they're, the place is on fire, et cetera, et cetera. And they had 2 goals within a foot of the goal line. You get the patented Zach Hyman bank shot, and of course Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid type things. So I'm just looking for tonight for the Stars to play better in this first period and not have to crawl back, which of course they've done basically in every series for the last 3 years, losing basically almost every game won. So, have you learned your lesson? Can you do anything to, it's one thing learning a lesson. It's another thing sort of putting that into practice. Can you do anything about that? So I think, Dallas is the better team. Same way I thought Dallas was the much better team before the series against Colorado and before the series against Vegas. Nothing has changed. I am deep into the weeds here as far as the Dallas series price after they lost game 1 and honestly after game 2, even, as they evened that series. And, for the Stanley Cup as well. So, I don't know that I necessarily need to bet the game tonight. Obviously, as we see in a lot of cases, that the team that lost the previous game starts to get a little bit more credit, especially at home, must-win game, et cetera, and people kind of coming in on the Oilers here, moving this off an opening price that was a little bit lower than this for the Oilers. I believe it opened around -120, -125. And closed, around -119, I think was the best price that you could get for game 3. So I'm just looking at this, probably staying away because I respect the desperation element and all of that, kind of narrative stuff. And because honestly, with the Stars, you might as well wait until the first intermission. If you're dying to bet the Stars, you might as well wait and just grab them to, have a comeback of sorts. And if they can get out of the first tied, it's like a bonus.
So, Money, I'm interested in your thoughts on how we've seen the shift in the series prices. I got the opportunity to talk to you on Monday, and we brought up the fact that I'm looking at Pinnacle prices from what we had on Monday on game 3 and what we were talking about Monday morning before that game to where the series prices are currently sitting at now from Pinnacle. And if people take a look over at those, you see, just go look at the series price. The Oilers before game 3, -113. The Stars, -102. You want to take a look at what those are right now? The Oilers +204. The Stars, -240. This is a drastic swing. I'm curious, again, I'm going to ask you basically the same question, but this one is more rooted in just how big the number has swung the other way. I brought up, hey, we've got 2 games in Edmonton here. This one is tied 1-1. The Oilers are now favored. That makes sense, but it's also made sense based on what we've seen out of the first 2 games in Dallas there. What the hell is going on with this number to swing it so far this way? Is this just sheer reaction of wow, the Oilers, they can't hold on here with Dallas? Is this concern for the fact that they're just losing that ability to have some of this home ice here in the series? What is pushing this number from -113 ahead of game 3 to +204 for the Oilers on the series ahead of game 4?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the reaction and to what the Oilers and the Stars looked like when game 3 ended. We'll also, if the Oilers do win tonight, we'll also see that significantly shift back the other way. That's just the way the playoffs go. I think that even Matt touched on it just now, right? You have the desperation factor. It's tough to incorporate that into your analysis of the game, but there's no question that does play into the line composition of the game, right? So if you do want to bet Edmonton today, you will be betting into a premium because of the desperation factor. Right? If you still have an edge on Edmonton, even with that premium, then of course you bet them, right? So in terms of looking at this game, that I am the biggest goaltender apologist there is, right? I will always give every goalie the benefit of the doubt. It's getting tough for me with Skinner, right? It's taken almost 3 years, but I'm starting to get there on Skinner. I'm starting to. Right. Now, that's not to say that it's all his fault. It's never always the goalie's fault, right? You have a guy in CC, you have a guy in Nurse that just look terrible. And he's the other guy that I was going to mention that as the games go on, we see him starting to get exposed too in terms of I don't know if there's a conditioning thing or what's going on there, but there is a problem there on the back end. So do you bring in Broberg? I don't know, right? Or the other option, and I know that Knobloch, like we've talked about his balls before, right? So like we know that he's not afraid to make the big decisions, right? So like maybe you split up that top pairing, right? Like maybe you go that drastic. I don't know, right? So I think that at some point, and probably starting in this game, there has been a consensus in the locker room that okay, we got to get back to how we need to play in front of Skinner, right? It's just the way it is. Maybe they got too high on themselves after building up that lead. We've seen Edmonton do this. They go through stretches. We saw this in the Canucks series as well, where they kind of lose their identity a bit, and that happened in Game 3. So I would expect the Oilers to kind of get back to the way that they need to play, the way that they've shown they're capable of playing. And we did bet the over in Game 3. I think that we'll be switching the script here again, because the Oilers, they understand they need to play a certain way, and we've touched on this before. Dallas is fine playing any way that you want to play, and in a game where Dallas may not come out with the most focus, as we've seen Dallas show the last couple of years, that sometimes they don't come out with the best focus in games that they don't absolutely need to win. I think that we can probably be comfortable with thinking that the Oilers are going to dictate their pace in this game, and the pace that the Oilers should understand and probably do understand they need to play is to get back to tightening it up. So under 6 up to -120 is where I bet this game.
Okay, so we'll grab the under 6 -120 here at Pinnacle. Matt, I'll let you get in here with some more thoughts on the game, but I just want to let people know where we're locking this in, the price and that kind of stuff, and then we'll be tracking this and recapping at the very end of the show as well.
Yeah, so listen, the Stuart Skinner is a bad goalie take might be one of my finest ever, and has been going to almost as long as so money has been stumping for him. It might be the one thing that we have disagreed on over the last couple of years. And it's not that the guy's like jumping over pucks or anything. Like whoops, there it goes in the net like constantly, right? But at this point in the playoffs, especially when all these teams, I mean, look at how you talk about odds changes. Look at the Stanley Cup odds on a given, any given day, right? It's everything is just kind of floating around like a body of water. And it's because these four teams are so, sort of tightly matched. Every game is a 1-goal game. You can't give up the soft goal. You can't. Like, that's just unacceptable at this point in the program, right? It's this late in the deal. You can't come back from that. And so watching Skinner, it just, to me, is like, okay, I can't rely on that whether I have an edge on the Oilers or not. And that's why it's not like I'm going to come back on the Oilers here. As for the pricing with the series is concerned, I mean, you have to, keep in mind we went from the Oilers having home ice advantage and the series being tied to now the Stars have home ice advantage back again, for whatever that is actually worth these days. And the Stars have a lead, right? So there's two sort of key elements in that price changing and putting the Oilers kind of, as you say, like that to plus 200. It's like they no longer have home ice, even if they win the game tonight, which, by the way, they still have to win the game just to get this thing back to being tied, at which point they still wouldn't be the favorite because they weren't the favorite at the start of the series anyway, right? So like, it does make sense to me that gap would exist regardless of what happens on the ice. And what's happening on the ice is such this interesting thing where it's like, I think we all thought that the Stars were going to be the better team at even strength, and that if this series played mostly at even strength, especially with the Oilers all of a sudden outrageously good penalty kill, if it was going to be power plays left and right, that the Oilers were going to have a significant advantage. And the interesting thing is, like, that hasn't actually been the case. There hasn't been that many power plays for either side, somewhat predictable given the state of the playoffs that we're in here. But also the Oilers have been sort of technically the better team, 41-31 in even strength, high danger chances, and an edge in expected goal share. The problem is, and it's kind of similar to the Rangers-Panthers series, which I think we're going to talk about here in a second, But it's like when that is going so well for you or so unexpectedly well, and it's still not translating to a series lead, that's a problem, because as the sample size grows, I would expect the Stars to take over the even strength lead, if you will, when it comes to the advanced metrics. And that's problematic for the Oilers, given that like the things that they're doing really well. I mean, even look at the penalty kill, 21 straight penalty kills. Like the Stars are going to score a power play goal at some point. Like, I'm sorry, the Oilers PK isn't like otherworldly historically great. They are on an awesome run. They are on a statistically improbable run. But the point is like that's going to regress to the mean. So all the good stuff that the Oilers have done, all that has accrued is a 2-1 series deficit, which is like a really scary situation, especially if you don't expect the goaltending to get all that much better and the goaltending matchup to be, beneficial. The way the Rangers at least get to look at their thing and be like, you know what, we don't have to necessarily be the better team at even strength. We got Igor Shesterkin back there, and Bobrovsky's capable of blowing up, right? So you're looking at the better team having the better goaltending and having sort of the statistical regression that we expect to come with a larger sample size. So I'm sitting back. Like I said, I'm watching this game. I'm hoping the Stars take a 3-1 series win, go back to Dallas and finish it off. Honestly, wouldn't surprise me in the least. I think Dallas is a better team by far to start the series. I don't know what the deal is with the first periods. I don't know what the deal is with the game ones with the Stars, but I'm feeling pretty good. Even in a potential loss tonight, I'm feeling pretty good about the Stars winning this series in 6 or, of course, 7 games with the almighty DeBoer Game 7 record.
Yeah. Well, at least if it goes 7, you can take some type of comfort in the fact that Pete DeBoer is 8-0 in those Game 7. So maybe the Stars are just trying to get it there to help him with his legacy, help him with this record and get it up to 9 or something like that. But
absolutely.
There you go. There's our Western Conference breakdown of what's going on there in that series, and ahead of tonight's game, Game 4 between the Stars and the Oilers, their final game in Edmonton here before we head back to Dallas for Game 5. Best bet in this one, under 6, -120. We grabbed that at Pinnacle Sportsbook. We will recap all these at the very end of the show here, but let's head on over to the Eastern Conference, where we're seeing the Panthers and the Rangers going head-to-head in a pretty tight series there as well. Wrapping that one up in Florida last night, Mr. Alber got the opportunity to go down there and see, I think, both games in Florida. So good for him watching both of those. Unfortunately, not able to come back 2-0, but I think he'd be pretty happy with the split nonetheless in 2 overtime games. So even if it's just going to come down to how good was the hockey, it's some pretty good hockey for him to get to watch. I think the only thing that might be tough for him, as Charles bringing up here, is that he saw Alber fighting a pack of Panthers fans on his way out of the stadium. But yes, Charles, as I'm pretty sure most Panthers and Rangers fans or Panthers and Rangers bettors have lost 15 years of their lives thanks to those 2 games. We do see this series now evened up 2-2. Panthers winning last night's game 3-2 in overtime in Game 4 to swing this one back to New York here. And if we're looking at series prices, we see some adjustments. It's some bigger adjustments here as well. We see Panthers going from +129 ahead of Game 4 to now -144 on the series price. The Rangers -148 to +125 as well. So money. Again, what do you make of the series shift here? We're going back to New York. We're going to get Rangers back on home ice. You're looking at this one at 2-2. You have the Rangers sitting with technically home ice advantage. It's going to come down to a best 2 of 3 here now. And yet we're seeing the Rangers +125 heading into Game 5. What are your thoughts on that series price and what we've seen out of these 2 teams so far?
Yeah, it's been an interesting series, but it's been going kind of the way that we talked about and the way that we've talked about this Rangers team last week and last month over the course of the year, last year, right? It's the same script with the Rangers team. They're going to get outplayed. They're going to get outchanced. The game's going to come down to whether or not they will finish. That's all that is with the Rangers games at this point. And I hate to make it so simplistic because there's a lot of nuance involved in these games, but that's really what it comes down to with the Rangers, right? So you look at this series, yes, the Panthers are the better team. Yes, the Panthers have advantages all over the ice, but the better team doesn't always win. And we know that because if the best team always won, the Canucks would have had a ring in 2011, right? So So
There we go.
So the best team doesn't always win. Now, what I do like about the Panthers is that they are resilient, right? I don't think that they're the kind of team with what they've been through over the last couple of years, and even what they went through even before that, with the adversity they faced and how they had to grow up in that series loss to Tampa Bay. I don't think that they're the kind of team that is going to get is going to go off script, right? I was one of the avenues, and we talked about this when we talked about the preview of the series, is that one of the avenues here for the Rangers would have been if the Panthers beat themselves or they lose their head, they start running around. We're not seeing that, right? If it was going to happen, it would have happened already, right? And as this series goes on, it's less likely that it is going to happen, especially because we're at 2-2 now, right? So I think the Panthers, they will stick to the script. Whether or not they win, I don't know. Do you ever know who's going to win a Rangers game, right? So I don't know if they're going to win or not, but I don't expect the Panthers to beat themselves, and I do expect them to continue carrying the play. I feel that the game 5 line is a little short on the Panthers. I would be more inclined to bet on the Panthers, knowing that I really have no idea what to expect from Rangers games. So I do have an edge on Panthers. I will bet it because I do expect the Panthers to continue carrying play. I don't expect them to lose their heads, and eventually I would think that they start breaking through, but you just never know. So I will go ahead and bet the Panthers though, and I have them up to minus 124 in this game.
Okay, so we'll grab a minus 115 there. BetMGM is going to be locked in here as a next bet here on the show today. So minus 115 for the Panthers. Best price available currently. We will recap everything at the very end. Matt, are you kind of on the same page here with So Money in terms of, I mean, laying out some stuff that even Moretto has been high on or big on all season about the Rangers, the way that they play, the luck factors, that kind of stuff, and then just what we're seeing, the swings in the series right now?
Well, I was going to say, what happens if we have a best bet the other way? Because this Rangers team is following a script that they are just inherently comfortable with. Right. It's the point of, you mentioned Moretto talking about it all season long, and I was there too. And I was there last series with the Hurricanes. They go against everything that we're supposed to believe in. Right. They constantly get outchanced. They constantly, they're constantly losing the expected goal share, or it's sort of like, break even on the expected goal share against the Capitals of all teams in the first round. Of course, they win all 4 games, basically most of those games, by 1 goal. And I just look at this Rangers team, I compare it to the run that the Golden Knights went on last year, right? Where we all just bang our head against the wall and go, I can't believe the Golden Knights are doing what the Golden Knights are doing. But the difference between the script that the Golden Knights went off of and the script that the Rangers are trying to go off of is the Golden Knights did it with Aiden Hill from a goaltending perspective, right? A guy who couldn't even get the starting job for them this year. That was, I'm sorry, Golden Knights fans, that was a fluke. The Rangers are doing it with Igor Shesterkin, which I think on any given day, we can sort of assign him kind of a top 3 to top 5 to maybe just number 1 goaltender in the NHL, right? The level of predictability between those two things is not the same thing. And it's the same thing with the Rangers from, on a skater perspective. The Golden Knights, they got the Conn Smythe Trophy to Jonathan Marchessault last year, a guy who might be a cap casualty this offseason for the Golden Knights, right? Meanwhile, the Rangers have all of the, this 2 lines worth of scoring. They're now getting Alexis Lafreniere rocking and rolling. But they also have 4 guys who haven't scored a goal in this series and going into the last series. We've got, I believe, I might get this mixed up, but Panarin hasn't scored in 8 games and Zibanejad in 6. It might be the reverse. But the point is, not getting a goal from Panarin or Zibanejad and still being 2-2 in this series is kind of unbelievable. And Kreider hasn't scored yet in this playoffs, right? So when you're sitting there kind of trying to predict the luckiness of the Rangers, and that luckiness is based on the idea that some really talented scorers score, I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. And if that luckiness is involved with Shesterkin being a really good goaltender, I'm pretty comfortable with that as well. Especially, relative to like Aiden Hill, who like comes out of nowhere and might be gone just as quickly. So looking at these two teams for these games in New York, I think the setting matters when it comes to maybe necessarily the chances of one team winning, but I think the style of game to be played. And somebody mentioned like Florida's not going to hurt themselves. I mean, they were a debatable call away from a 5-minute major on, what I felt was like a pretty dirty hit in was it game 1 or game 2 in New York, right? These games in New York tend to be played with this frenetic, like hang on, strap in type of feel to them. Whereas, listen, the games in Florida weren't exactly boring, right? We had a 4-4 going to overtime, electric factory. And Florida had the desperation element, right? If we're going to try to handicap some of these games at this time of year with the desperation element, they had the desperation element in game 3 coming off of a loss. Bobrovsky essentially blew the game for them with a 3.1, a negative 3.1 goal save above expectation in that game. And then the next game, they had the desperation again because they lost the previous game, right? So it's the Rangers' turn in this game to be that desperate team. And at home in games 1 and 2, the high danger chances at even strength are 20-19 for Florida. The expected goal share was like 50.5% in favor of the Rangers. So we could get, in theory, that similar type of production level at even strength. And of course, if we know that if we get power plays, et cetera, even if the Rangers haven't had necessarily a ton of success on the power play, got going a little bit last night, all the recipe still exists, right? The thing that the Rangers like to do, the thing that they're comfortable, the game that they're the type of game they're okay with playing, the universe that they live in is still going to exist. And you have all these guys that frankly, #do factor, are due to kind of come up big here. We had Zibanejad right at the end of that regulation in the game last night on that deflection. I don't know about you guys, like, that's a goal most of the time for Zibanejad, right? He just misses the net on that deflection, right? So those guys might be a little bit, I don't know, maybe from like an injury perspective, things are starting to pile up on the Rangers, and that's the element where I'm sort of like, okay, I could be missing, of course, the hidden injuries, especially on the, the blue line. The panel, on Hockey Night in Canada was talking about how they're pretty banged up on the blue line, but that hasn't really affected, obviously, their ability to stay in these games. We've got 3 straight overtime games. And a game that was effectively 1-0 until Lafreniere ironically scored on his own net in game 1. Speaking of motivation to get it going for the rest of that series, scoring on your own goal at the end of game 1. So I just look at it and I go, like, if you're going to give me a plus price on either of these teams in these sorts of 50-50 games, that's my preference, right? And we're getting upwards of plus 106 on the Rangers. And so that's a bet that I'm going to make. And from a series price, I bet the Rangers before the series started. It's good for us who have bet the Rangers before the series started that we are down to effectively a 3-game series with home ice advantage because the way that the play tightens when these games are played at Madison Square Garden. Again, small sample size, just 2 games. And the difference between me liking the Hurricanes in that first and in the second round series and the Panthers here is that the Hurricanes are so outrageously higher than everyone when it comes to that expected goal share and those high danger chance elements, that it's like unavoidable that you kind of have to back that. Florida, for all the sort of credit that we give them and all the, how deep they are and sort of playoff tested that they are, they didn't have the same level of metrics that the Hurricanes had. Right? The Hurricanes are that sort of far up and above. So that's what I mean. Like, if it's a little bit tighter, like I'm building in the element of the Rangers' luck because I believe in the talent that they have to get lucky. Whereas some of these teams that we've seen, i.e. the Golden Knights, kind of just got career playoff runs from a couple of guys that we wouldn't necessarily expect to see. Whereas the Rangers, I think we have a little bit of higher expectation of the talent on that team.
So here's what we're going to do, because we have opposing best bets here. We're not going to lock in one on either side. We'll tweet out that we've got a head-to-head from the two of you from the official Edgework account. But for people watching, listening, however you're consuming this, we still have effectively 2 full days until this game, the puck drops in this game. So for people to be able to make their own opinion and their own decision on this one, you heard So Money's reasoning, you hear some reasoning from Matt. We do have to get out of here shortly, but So Money, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of maybe give a rebuttal to anything Matt had said, maybe your opinion to persuade people to your side and why you think that this number on Florida at -115, and then Matt will give you final say on this one after the fact. And then I'll answer one more question from the chat and we'll get out of here, but we'll keep it a little bit tight. I just want to give people an opportunity to make their own opinion based on what your guys' thoughts are. So Money, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so just quickly, I completely agree with everything Matt said, right? Especially with the way that Carolina played that series and the way that we know Carolina plays the last couple of years. And we also know what to expect from the Rangers. We've been on this for even during the Carolina series that Carolina is a good matchup for the Rangers. The difference with Florida is that, yes, Florida is not going to put up the kind of numbers in the kind of metrics that the Hurricanes put up, but that's by design as well. Florida is not the same team as Carolina, who is dependent on just throwing everything on net. They funnel everything through the neutral zone, get it on net. That's Rod Brind'Amour style. Florida is not like that. They're more controlled, and I think that's where the difference lies here, because Florida will not let the Rangers get out on the counter the way that Carolina did. And Florida knows this, and it is all by design with the Panthers. So that would be the difference when you look at the peripherals between Carolina and the Panthers and the way that this matchup breaks down against the Rangers.
And Matt, final thoughts here for yourself on this matchup for game 5.
Yeah, those are all very, very strong points, and I don't disagree with anything that So Money says, and I would normally be on Florida based on all of these sort of facts, right? It's just sort of acknowledging that, like, I'm tired going back to 2 years ago when the Rangers made their run to the conference finals, despite just getting absolutely waylaid by Pittsburgh in the first round from a metric standpoint. It's like seeing what a team is doing, how they're doing it, and sort of, is this predictable? Is this not predictable? And that's just fundamentally, like, the Rangers are essentially the exception to the rule. So the rule is we should be betting the Panthers, like, short price, like, all of that makes sense. It's the sort of, I keep using the term luck because you brought that up with regards to sort of Alex and I talking about it all season long.
Yeah.
But it's like, it kind of ceases to be luck, right? When you just keep doing it over and over and over and over again, right? And I just look at, again, this game specifically, and the fact that the Rangers are at home for 4 out of the 7 games and 2 of the final 3 games, and these games being largely coin flip games, and, honestly, just the talent that the Rangers have, which I think we have to acknowledge, like, yes, their talent doesn't necessarily equate to a better than 50% expected goal share for an entire season, which, by the way, they won the President's Trophy in, right? Like, that's not what they do. They are, like, as So Money says, like, they're counterattacking and obviously converting on the power play and that sort of thing. And you know what? Like, they've gotten to Bobrovsky a bunch of times here, and fundamentally, I just trust Shesterkin more than I do Bobrovsky. And so, like, they have the things that the Oilers don't have, for example, right? And in the same situation, Florida is like, yeah, we're dominating play, and all we have to show for it is still not home ice advantage, again, for whatever that's worth. It's the same kind of deal, right? But, like, again, and for as much as we're talking about the Rangers and Panthers, right, my opinion is so much stronger on the Stars than on the Rangers, because, again, the Rangers, it's just kind of like faith, right? It's just kind of the faith that the talented players on the Rangers are going to finally score, and that Shesterkin is going to be the better goaltender and continue to frustrate the Panthers. And just quickly, there's an interesting point on the chat here, Jordan Moselle, about offset by Trouba elbow only being 2 minutes when we were talking about the 5-minute major or whatever. But that's kind of the point, right? If both teams just started flailing away on 5-minute majors and the game got kind of crazy and weird and power plays and stuff, right? I'm not saying that, like, they lost that game because they didn't get that power play. I'm saying, like, that the possibility of the games getting sort of out of hand and wacky and sort of, high tempo and just nuts, it still is, like, this close to, like, kind of getting there with these teams. And Florida knows that, and Paul Maurice knows that his team, the thing that they had to kind of, rein back from last year, is that they were kind of that team to, like, mess around after the whistle and get a little loose when it came to the physical play. And that could pop up at any given time. And that's all I mean by that, especially in these games in New York where the atmosphere is kind of crazy.
All right, so final thing I want to ask you guys before we wrap up show here today, and again, to those people out there, we're not going to lock in a best bet on either side of this one. We do have a head-to-head there, so we'll tweet that out, and then whoever wins of you two, you get some bragging rights on this game, but other people can make their own decisions on what they want, as we do have plenty of time to let game tease off. But last question I want to ask here before we get out. So many Joshua here saying one book is offering finals look-ahead lines, and they would have the Panthers as slight -115 favorites over the Stars. Would you agree with that line? And Matt, we'll get your opinion as well after.
Yeah, I would. In terms of line composition, I think that Panthers -115 is exactly where it should be, for sure.
All right, fair enough. Matt, anything to
add? Stars have home ice advantage in that series, right? No, Florida does.
Yeah.
So in that, I haven't run the numbers. I'm still, listen, I'm just trying to get the Stars into the next round, and buying and bought them at +400, after game one. So I'm probably not going to have a bet on it. So again, I haven't have a new bet on it, I should say. So I haven't looked at it. It would make sense to me that these two teams basically rated equally throughout the season at about 20% above league average. With the Florida Panthers being having home ice advantage, then it would make sense for me that they would be the slight favorite. And maybe honestly, because of the home ice advantage element, maybe that is actually technically a little bit short. But the difference there is potentially, sorry, what did you say, someone?
Dallas would have home ice.
Oh, Dallas would have home ice. So, okay, yeah. And in that case, I think that's giving maybe a little bit too much credit to Florida. So I don't know that that's necessarily... I don't know if I'm dying to jump on a -105 with the Stars right now. I mean, if you had no position and you thought that was going to be the matchup, I don't know that the number changes that drastically so that you need to make that bet now, I guess is kind of my overall point.
Right. All right. There you go. That's our breakdown of the Eastern Conference Finals games that we're seeing coming up, the Western Conference Finals ahead of us here tonight. Our best bets, if you want to see them yourself, you can head over to the BetStamp app in the Find Better section as Edgework HQ. But just quick recap, only one official bet locked in, and that would be in the Dallas-Edmonton game. We're going to go under 6 -120. That is our best bet, the under 6 -120 between the Stars and the Oilers for tonight's game. We appreciate everyone who tuned in here today. If you did enjoy the show, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe here to the channel. If you are listening on podcast platforms, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. It helps us grow. It helps us continue to do more content and do more shows. So Money, Matt, thank you guys very much for taking the time to do this here today, filling in on the Wednesday show. It is very much appreciated. I think we absolutely crushed it here today, answered some questions, broke down some series, gave out a best bet. So thank you guys very much as always. To everyone else out there, we'll be back on Friday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll recap tonight's game. We'll recap tomorrow night's game. And then we'll look ahead to Friday and Saturday, and I guess Sunday's games as well. Hopefully give out some more best bets and answer some questions. So thanks so much to everyone who tuned in here today. We appreciate it as always. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the game tomorrow, and good luck on your bets.